I'll take this talk in 3 parts, but before that, I would like to start with all of you sharing some of your thoughts. That what do you think is the way in which the social media usage affects us emotionally? So, what are the detrimental effects, or what are the issues of concern that you feel? So, I'll be using this as a whiteboard to write and draw certain things. Visible to everyone? Okay. So, yes, maybe when you speak, you can just start with your name and then you can share. Yes, please.
My name is Jasmine, and like the constant stimulation of news and information we have access to on social media.
Yes, so constant stimulation. And what does that do?
That could overwhelm us. And
Yes, the constant stimulation can be overwhelming. It just constantly things are coming up from various directions. So I'll try to review these things as we move forward also, but let's start. Thank you for that. Yes.
I think self-image.
Self-image, yes. We often compare ourselves with others, and especially when people put images of themselves, they often put the best images, or we could say the best doctored images. So then it causes a lot of insecurity at one level. Yes, please.
Stephen, my name is Solis. I think, I don't know if this is a mental health, but it doesn't allow us to sleep at times because we're constantly having the social media open when we should be sleeping.
Oh yeah, so we can keep us sleepless as constant messages keep coming.
There's this thing I heard that you always have to always be on top of what's happening. Natural, there's a word for it, I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I think everyone knows the word.
You get to feel like you have to be now.
Yeah. It's, you know this word, isn't it?
There you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
So I was giving a talk in Australia, and there this one student had just come from, I think, some part of India, and he didn't know the meaning of FOMO. And he felt very nervous when everybody said the meaning. He said, okay, I had fear of missing out about not knowing the meaning of fear of missing out. So it can become a cycle in itself. Yes, please.
And just piggybacking on the constant stimulation, during COVID, all the information that was coming in, especially the deaths and people who were, trying to find, like a vaccine, it was depressing. So.
Okay, so in one sense, the excessive usage, it has been correlated with depression. It's depressing. We'll talk about this a little bit more, why it happens, but it is true that greater social media usage has generally been correlated with greater amount of depression, especially among teenagers. You had some comment?
Yeah, my name's Evan. I'm not sure if it's too related to the other stuff, but something I find is constant disagreement, like just going on posts and seeing stuff you disagree with and getting into arguments.
Yes. I disagree with the use of the word disagreement because I would say it's much more than that. It's almost polarization. Isn't it? It's a very... See, normally, if you're talking with someone face to face, we all have a certain level of courtesy that we maintain in our speech. But when the other person is just an avatar on social media, we don't know who is there. And people also, if we are doing it anonymously, people don't know who we are. Then often it brings out the worst in people. So, and just for a few cheap thrills, so it is just disagreement is there, but it can become especially nasty in a way that face to face does not become. Or at least it will take a lot more time to become. We will take a lot more time to become that discourteous on face to face interactions. That's true. Very important. Yes, please.
My name is Sandy. I think that it can become an addiction to just when you need something really fast, you just go ahead and Google it, which becomes an issue. Like you want something like that, and that's not how good things happen or great things work.
Yeah, it's a good point. So it can be addictive, and we just look for quick information for everything, and then sometimes, as you're saying in the introduction, that a certain level of deeper thinking can be impeded. Yeah, thank you. It's quite a comprehensive list. I was not prepared for this talk, so you gave me material now. Thank you. So, let's explore this. As I said, I'll take the talk in 3 broad parts. I will first talk about the concerns. Then I'll talk about the concept. I will be drawing on a model of our inner world from an Eastern tradition to make sense of what happens in our inner world, and then finally what happens because of the use of social media, and then finally we'll talk about cures or solutions. So most of you have already mentioned the concerns. I'll just phrase them in a particular way. 3 main concerns, or there are many, but they can be broadly categorized in 3. One is excessive. You talk about overstimulation. See, our mind and our senses are not designed, are not meant for so much stimulation. When there is excessive stimulation, there is a overload, and it is a sort of deadening that happens. So when there is, okay, I read this here, I watched this there, I saw this there, I typed this there. There's just so much going on. The pace of the mind becomes very fast. And we may think, okay, we live a fast life and it's good, I like to think fast. But there is one thing which is thinking fast, and one is hasty thinking, hasty speaking. So when our mind goes in an overdrive, it just doesn't calm down. So when the stimuli are excessive, that often leaves us feeling strained. Strained because the mind is on overdrive. A machine can function fast for some time, but it's constantly at a high speed. Like if we are running physically, if we are running in a sprint, we can run for some time very fast. But if you have to run on sprint speed for a marathon, we will just collapse. So our mind goes in an overdrive, and that's why we just, after some time, just mentally we can start becoming, either our functioning becomes impeded, or we can become even dysfunctional to some extent. So it's like we are going on sprint speed throughout life, and that just is not sustainable. It can initially seem very exciting. Oh, I can watch this, I can read this, I can do that, but it just becomes excessive after some time. So that's the first problem. Now the second is what somebody mentioned to it. Often it's exaggerated. Exaggerated means that whatever comes up in social media, it's, for example, if we consider Twitter or X, that is a place for very calm, reasoned, thoughtful, respectful discussions. Is it? Well, it's opposite of that, isn't it? So everybody goes on that everybody's trying to get more and more views, everybody's trying to get more and more likes, and then things become exaggerated. So one bad thing might have happened, but that same thing gets recycled, and as it is being transmitted, sometimes we have this whole game of whispers where things become worse. And this exaggeration, it could be intentional at one level, because some people might just spin a story to their advantage. That's how sometimes biases and hate speech and violence can occur. But sometimes it may not be intentional, it might just be mechanical. Mechanical means it might happen because of the way the algorithm is designed. Let's say if I read on a particular issue from one perspective, one article, and then what happens is the algorithm says, okay, this person is interested in reading this kind of stuff, they'll show 10 more articles from that same perspective. And then we read 10 more articles and we think, hey, so many people think like this. Then we may get 10 more articles. Now we will not read any of them very seriously, but just read so many people thinking like this. Basically, have any of you heard of this term echo chamber? Okay, this is echo chamber or echo bubble. You know what it is?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's like you're just like hearing the same things like over and over.
Yes.
It becomes repetitive.
Yes. So thank you. So it's like literally if we go into a chamber and sometimes some places you speak loudly and your own sound comes back to you after some time. That's the physical meaning of echo chamber. But in social media, this echo chamber means basically we just hear our own view amplified and returned to us. And then basically we all will, by the nature of life, have disagreements. But in general, if we think, oh, so many people think in the same way, or that this person also thinks like this, this person also thinks like this. Now, there are many people who think from other perspective, but when we get caught in that echo chamber, we are fed articles from the same direction. And then we start thinking that anybody who disagreements are inevitable. But when there are disagreements, so how we see the disagreements is very important for our relationships. So at a basic level, we could say that if there's a disagreement, maybe at a positive side, maybe they have another perspective. Maybe I don't know enough. So maybe there's something for me to learn from the other person's perspective. That could be more on the positive side. But if we have become convinced that Maya is the only right thing, then what happens is we come to the level of negative, start seeing everybody negatively. So this person is uninformed. And that is the most charitable explanation. This person doesn't know. But what can be worse is this person is foolish. That means they have poor judgment. It's not just lacking information. They have the information, but they don't have the intelligence to judge things properly. But what is worst is that we start thinking this person is malicious. This person is evil. And that's where disagreements degenerate to polarization. So here basically, it's like when we go deeper into a person, when he's uninformed, we just say that, okay, they don't have the data. But they're foolish, they just don't have the intelligence. And when they say somebody is malicious, their intention itself is bad. So when we go to this level, when we start thinking somebody has bad intentions, then it's very difficult to have any kind of connection with that person. So that's how, while social media was meant to bring people closer to each other, to basically as the idea social, to have people become more social. And I don't want to pile on social media. There is a lot of good that can also be done. And people do connect. But the dangers, the vulnerabilities are very much there. And because of this, when there are polarizations, whether they be racial polarizations, religious polarizations, political polarizations, they just become sharper and sharper. So this is often things are exaggerated. Now, exaggerated also, we mentioned this earlier. So when things are exaggerated, what happens is, as I talked here, when it's excessive, we become strained. When things are exaggerated, we become agitated, we become worried, we become hateful. I'll come to hateful is probably an extreme thing, but we become anxious, we become worried. So here, another way things are exaggerated, which you mentioned, is that often people just highlight the best moments of their life. And when they highlight the best moments of their life, we start thinking, hey, my life is not enjoyable enough. My life is, oh, this person looks good, so good, this person has such a nice relationship, this person has such a nice time, and I don't have that. And often when we compare ourselves with others, now to some extent, comparison is unavoidable in life. We live in a competitive world. So comparison can be at two levels. One is functional. Functional means that at a functional level, okay, if we are to have a musical band, then who should lead that band? Okay, this person is a better singer, let them lead the band. If we are going to cook food, who is good at cooking? Whatever event we are going to do, at a functional level, evaluation, which involves comparison, is required. But from that functional level comparison, it can become compulsive. Compulsive means that we just can't stop comparing. So this is where it becomes a comparing mentality. When we are constantly comparing ourselves with others. I have seen this myself. I have been sharing spiritual wisdom for almost 25 years now. I became a monk about 35 years ago. So in the last 10 years, social media has become big. Some of my content is also put online. So whenever any content goes there, the mind goes first, okay, how much is this viewed? How much is this appreciated? And I have my peers, how much is theirs appreciated? Now we are all trying to share wisdom for the service of humanity. It really doesn't matter if somebody else gets more views. It just means that more people are being reached with the message. But that, I've seen that it's such a toxic thing. Comparison, especially in terms of the comparing mentality, this is often the thief of happiness. There's practically nothing that can so easily rob us of happiness. There are many things which can rob us of happiness. Say if we lose our health, we lose our job, something bad happens to us. But those are all events that when they happen, they rob us of happiness. But when our mind becomes excessively comparative, when we get hooked with a trap, or when we become compulsively comparative, then nothing really bad has to happen. But suddenly we get overwhelmed by bad feelings. Now, we might have had we might go for outing, we might go for a picnic, and then we had a wonderful time there. But we come back and say, we post our pictures, and a friend went for a picnic, and say that friend's pictures have got more views than ours. Now we had a wonderful time, nothing bad happened, but just the fact that maybe they got more likes, that makes us feel terrible. So this way, there is not only a unnecessary comparison, there is also unhealthy comparison that happens. And this leads to a lot of, as I said, anxiety, insecurity, and to some extent, because the numbers are so easily evident in social media. So comparing becomes far, not just easier, but comparing becomes far more difficult to avoid. So that's why this is one of this exaggerated, distorted picture of reality that comes up, that causes a huge amount of problems. So when this insecurity comes up, see, all of us, I'll come back to this point a little later, but all of us, we face loss in life. Loss, failure, setback, but that is more like an event that happens. But how we experience that event, that varies from person to person. I'll explain what happens when we talk about the concept of our inner world. But this is the second part, that there is often a negative experience, even when the event might be a small negative. Okay, that's not negative. The event might be okay, again, that's funny. Okay, let's put it here. The event might be a small negative, but the experience can be hugely negative. So let's see, we'll talk about how this might happen, but this is the second part of it. So I'm going to talk about the concerns with social media in terms of three things. All three are X. What are the first X? Does anyone remember? Excessive, yes, good. Have I given you excessive information now? Okay. What is the second X? Exaggerated, yes, thank you. The third X is exploitative. Now what I mean by exploitative is that quite often when we are searching for something on social media, Our vision is, okay, I am surfing for information. I am in charge and I am looking. So we could say that, say we are fishing, and the fish to be caught is some data, some information. It could be, okay, I want to look for some entertainment, some break. And that's fair enough. We all need a break in life. But when these algorithms, the way they work is, they note what our likes are. And once they note what our likes are, they keep feeding us the same things again and again. Now that can affect us in terms of opinions, but an even more negative effect can be in terms of the addictive effect that comes up. When we are, okay, I see one video, maybe I see one Insta reel, I see one YouTube short, and immediately there are 5 more. And then I watch them, and I watch them, and I watch them. And I may think I'm going there for just 5 minutes to watch. And 5 hours are gone, I don't even realize it. And at the end of it, somebody asks, okay, what did you watch? Hey, what did I watch? I watched a lot of things. I don't even remember what I watched. So essentially what is happening is, we think we are fishing and the fish is the information. But actually, it's like the algorithm is there and our mind is the fish that is being caught. And generally when a fish is to be caught, there is a bait. So now imagine if there's a situation where a fishing person has gone into a place for fishing, and they know exactly which fish likes which kind of food, which kind of bait, and they provide exactly that bait. So once that bait is provided, then that fish just rushes there and gets caught. So that's exactly what's happening to us. Not only are we given a bait, but it's a bait customized according to our likes, according to our mind. And that's why it's so easy to get caught. We watch one thing and then a dozen other things, and a dozen other things, a dozen other things. And when this happens, because it's designed to be exploitative, the result of this is we end up becoming addicted. And quite often, we may think, sometimes we may waste a lot of time on social media. We decide, I don't want to waste such time. And we make a resolve, I'll give this up. And I decrease it. But then, again, we relapse. And when we start relapsing, then the result is, we start thinking, I'm a terrible person. So basically, when there is this social media addiction, now addiction is a strong word, and I'm using it in a non-technical sense over here. But we may have 2 unhealthy responses to it. One is nonchalance. It's no big deal. I can give up whenever I want. And I think it was Oscar Wilde who said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So now I gave up smoking, but smoking didn't give me up. So sometimes when we are nonchalant, we think it's easy to give it up, but we find ways that nonchalance is deceptive. It doesn't work. But then from that nonchalance, we go to the other extreme of the pendulum. And then sometimes people end up with self-loathing. Self-loathing is, I am such a weak-willed person. I resolved I won't do this. Why did I do this again? I'm worthless. I'm useless. And if nonchalance is unhealthy, self-loathing is even more unhealthy. Self-loathing can also come because of, as I earlier talked about, image consciousness. But just the compulsive use of something, even if it is not harming us immediately. Here I am not going too much into the neurological aspects. That's a more technical subject which we could also discuss. But I am here talking simply from the psychological aspect over here. That when we resolve to do something and when we are not able to do it, and our self-worth takes a beating at that time. And when the self-worth takes a beating, then that is very damaging. So when we talk about addiction, the harm of addiction is not only just the physical cost of it. Maybe, okay, it's harmful for health, or maybe you have to spend a lot of money on it, you have to spend a lot of time on it, we waste a lot of time on it. So there are some, say, drugs which could be very harmful in terms of their addictive effect. So addiction, it has a physical side to it. Now the problem with social media is that the physical is very visible. So for example, if somebody abuses alcohol a lot or abuses drugs, then it takes a toll on them physically over a period of time. Then, so that's very easily visible. But with respect to social media, there could be some physical effect, but a much more effect is the psychological. And the psychological is when we keep doing something which we know which we not only we know we don't want to do, but we keep doing it, then what happens is our sense of self-esteem or self-worth, it goes plummeting down. And this is quite damaging. So in this way, these three aspects, the excessive, the exaggerated, and the, what is the third? Exploitative. These three, they lead to stress, they can lead to insecurity and addiction. Now insecurity itself, it leads to either anxiety or depression. So basically, if we consider the spectrum of mental health problems that we have, these mental health problems have been existing for quite some time now, but the severity increases much more. The likelihood of a person succumbing to it is much more. Normally, if somebody is going to abuse drugs or abuse alcohol, they have to go to a particular place, they have to come out of that place, and the effects are visible. But in this case, it's not that visible. So you probably know this. This is called as SAD. People become sad, stressed, anxious, and depressed. So now, if you add this, it's SADA. Now, this is a sada. I come from India. In Sanskrit, this means constant, perpetual. So the idea is that this is a threat that is perpetual for us. For most other threats that we have to our mental health, they are not perpetual. We are not as vulnerable to them as constantly as we are with respect to this. So, before I move forward, any comments or questions? Any reflections? Okay. Yes, please.
I have a question, and it's about comparison. So I know that there could be, I'm not sure if this is the sentence is correct or not, but is there any level moving from the healthy comparison to like the bad comparison?
Good question. Thank you. So, the key difference is, see, each one of us is an individual. And as an individual, we all have different gifts. We all have our different shortcomings or limitations. Now, generally, say, if I consider this is an individual, or let's put it, if this is our experience. This is actually a nice segue to the next part that we're going to discuss. So now, in our experience of life, based on our individuality, say we have our social skills, how we talk with people. We have maybe our musical ability. We have maybe how we managerial things. So we may have our looks. We may have our IQ. So there are many aspects, this is just a short list, there are many aspects to our personality, our individuality. Now, generally, when there is comparison, it's just natural. Okay, this person is better at music, this person has a higher IQ. That's just natural. And that is not only natural, as I said, it's functional, sometimes necessary. Who should do what based on how good they are at. But among these various things that we have, see, we often identify more with something than others. So each one of us, we may identify, say, if somebody is very much into music. Now, music is one part of their life, but they may think of themselves primarily, oh, I'm a musician, or I'm a prospective musician. We may identify a lot with our looks. We may identify with our IQ. I'm a smart student. I'm this and that. So now, so that means we have our features and we have our identity. So now, in one sense, our identity comes from our features. But it's like generally our identity arises. Ideally speaking, our identity should be combination of various features. That is, our identity is a composite. But quite often, our identity comes from what we identify with. So, if we consider money, for example, now everybody needs money in life. But some people, they become so fixated with money that their net worth basically becomes equal to their self-worth. Now, money is one part of who they are, but that becomes their identity itself. Now, same way, for somebody, say, their social media following might become their identity. So basically, when one small part of us, or one part of us you can say, that becomes our identity. And then on that one small of, when that has become our identity, and basis of this we start comparing. We are not just comparing it, okay, this person is better at music than me. But by that we start thinking, okay, this person is better than me. So when it becomes our identity itself, then it takes us on an emotional roller coaster. So comparison is not just a functional observation. Comparison is not just a positive motivation at that time. Like you said, okay, this person has done so well in this field. I also want to do it. This person has learned so much, I also want to learn. But then there is a sense, okay, this is something which I can learn. But see, when you say I can learn this, that itself, this is a feature, and I am at a distance, I can learn this. But when it becomes my identity, oh, if I don't know this, I am worthless. Now it may seem that this identifying it may seem a little complex or psychological, but it is actually very tragic when it happens. I come from India, which is an educationally competitive country, and sometimes students, if they don't do well in an exam, they sometimes become suicidal. Now, okay, not doing exams well in the exams is not a good thing, but it's certainly not the end of the world. But when a person identifies their entire self-worth with their marks, with their grades, then they think that if I don't do this, if I not done well this exam, then I'm just dead. I'm worthless. So basically, when the negative comparison, if it's a negative comparison, that becomes our entire identity. That is when it becomes problematic. If it's an objective observation, okay, this is what happened. Okay, this person is better at this, means this. But okay, this is an area where I am good at. Let me focus on this. Or okay, actually I am so good in this area. Let me work on this. So as long as we have a sense of perspective, that this is a part of me I can improve, but when it becomes our identity, that is when it becomes a problem. Is this a point of our identity and what we identify with? Is that clear to some extent? Say we may identify with our height, we may identify with our weight, we may identify with the car that we drive. We identify with various things. But when that identification becomes excessive, it becomes defining for us. And then comparison in that case just becomes unbearable, especially if we fare negatively in that comparison. I hope I addressed your question. Okay, thank you. So, let me move on to the second part now. You want to comment something? So, I said first I'll talk about the issues of concerns. Then, now I'll talk about the concept. So, what exactly is happening when the social media starts affecting us negatively? What exactly happens? I'll especially talk about this point about self-loathing. Say when we want to do something, okay, I won't spend so much time on social media, and then we seem to relapse into it. So why exactly does that happen? So I'll talk about a model of the self that can help us to understand ourselves better, and also thereby be kinder to ourselves. So this model of the self, it is a yoga model. That means how many of you have heard the word yoga? Okay, thank you. So yoga is a physical exercise that can help us become fitter, but it is much more than that. Yoga is a part of a philosophy and a way of looking at the world. So from the yoga worldview, I am drawing this model. So basically, the self, this is a model of the self. Let's say the self is 3 level. There's the body, the mind, and what you can call soul, or you can call it the consciousness. So we have 3 aspects to our being, and this can be compared to a computer system, wherein we have the hardware, the software, and the user. So the hardware is like our physical side, the body. The software is like the mind, and the user is who we are. So now we could say in our world today there has been enormous progress at the level of the hardware, at the level of the body. We have, through technological advancement, an incredible amount of comforts and utilities. We have air travel, we have air conditioning, we have so many things which were unimaginable even for royalty, just possibly even 50 years ago. We have those, and yet we find that the software seems to be getting corrupted. A lot of people are having mental health problems. So basically, we have a situation where the physical comforts are improving, but the mind seems to be regressing. It's almost as if we could say today, people, you could say that we are comfortably unhappy. We are comfortable at the physical level, but somehow we are distressed. We are unhappy at the mental level. So before I move ahead, I just try to give a sense of this model. Basically, we may say that okay, there's something inside me, but what is this idea of consciousness and mind, or soul and mind? What exactly is that? But the mind is not the same as the brain. With this model, the brain is a part of the physical body. We can point to a location in our physical body where the brain is. But the mind is something subtler. Just like in a phone, we can't really point out where the software is. We can say the software is stored in this area, but that area is not the software. It's subtler. The mind is subtler like that. But to get a sense of this, let's do a thought exercise about this. There are these 2 levels being inside us. Just to make the sense of thought exercise, I'll first explain this model, and then we'll see how social media affects it. So just how do we process things? Let's keep this at a slight distance. So if we consider this is the soul, mind, body, and say here we have the the outer world. Now, from the consciousness comes out. So this is consciousness. So now when consciousness comes out from the spiritual side of us, say that's like if I have this phone now. Now here you will see this is the battery. Now from this light source, light is streaming outwards. Light is streaming outwards. So this light source is like the soul. And the light streaming out of it is like consciousness. Now, if I shut this, can you see the light now? So this shutter, now if it's, okay. Now can you see something? A little bit. Now, a little bit more. Now, it's fully there. So basically you could say, our mind acts like a shutter. The consciousness comes out from the soul, the mind acts like a shutter. But it's not just a shutter, it's also, here the light gets blocked completely. But imagine if there were a colored screen over here. Then the light would come out, would be of a particular color. So like that, whatever is the consciousness coming from our core, that goes through the mind to the outer world. And what we perceive in the outer world, that we take in, it comes to the mind, and the mind is like a screen on which it is displayed, and then we observe. So right now, for example, when you are hearing me, you are watching that. So that information is being integrated and it's presented to you on the mind, which is like an inner screen for you. Now, the inner screen, what you observe, you process that. So let's do a thought, with this quick background, let's do a short thought exercise. So wherever you are seated, you can just try to relax your hands, legs, and try to close your eyes. And now, so we'll do 3 deep breaths, and then we'll do guided meditation, guided thought exercise, wherein you can just try to follow what I'm suggesting. So first, let's have 3 deep breaths. And as you breath in, take in the freshness of the atmosphere and let all the lethargy or tiredness or apathy just go out. Negativity just go out. So 1 deep breath. 1. 2. 3. 4. Now you can try to continue breathing deeply, and while you are breathing deeply, you try to look ahead. Because your eyes are closed, you cannot see what is in front of you. But if you keep looking straight ahead, it's almost as if there is some kind of screen inside of you, in front of you. And on that screen, you might see the projected image over here. You might see the replica of this room. You might see the face of your favorite friend. You might see your home. Or you might see just a dull haze of colors over there. Or you might just see various images coming and going. But whatever it is that you see that on some kind of screen inside you. Now while you are looking at that screen, try to take a step backward and catch sight of the person who is looking at that screen. I repeat, you're looking at the screen, but now you want to look at the seer who is looking at the screen. Continue deep breathing and try to take a step back. Now, whenever you take a step back, you will find that seer seems to take a step back with you. What you are looking for is what you are looking with. Try once again. Try to take a step back while you are looking at the inner screen and try to see who is it that is looking at the screen. Whatever you try to do, it's as if the seer steps back with you. As I said, what we are looking for is what we are looking with. So that screen inside you is your mind. And that seer is you, the spiritual essence of who you are, the soul. Okay, take one deep breath and then slowly open your eyes. So basically, this inner screen this is our mind, and whatever this mysterious thing is, that seer, the inner seer, that is the core of who we are, core of our identity. So now, why am I talking about this model? This model can be a very useful tool to both understand how social media affects us and how we can protect ourselves from it. I give this example of a shutter. Now if the shutter were actually a red colored screen, red colored film, then the light you would see would be red. Now would willpower make a difference? No, I don't see the red color. See the white color. It's a white light. Will you see it as white? Now, we may know it is white, but we'll see it to be red. Because there's a real film over there. So the mind, this mind is a real thing, and the mind has within it impressions. Impressions are, is color visible? Oh no, is visible? Red? We will use another color. There are impressions within it. Impressions means that just like the covering film could become colored, so that the mind becomes colored. And when it becomes colored, it becomes impressed in particular ways, then that leads to our perceiving things in particular ways. Let me make this a little simpler. Have any of you heard of this thing? So we are right in the middle of that itself. Say suppose somebody has visited a particular website called Hollywood.com, and they visited 10 times, 20 times, maybe 100 times. And now maybe they have a friend who stays in some place which is called Holiday. Now they want to go to that place. They want to know what is that place. So now they want to type holiday. But as soon as they type H in their computer browser, in their phone browser, what will come? Hollywood. Now did they want to visit Hollywood.com? Doesn't matter. They didn't want to. But just because they visited that previously, that history is stored in their browser, and that will come as an autocomplete. So the browser history is a real thing stored in the history, and that browser history gives us particular autocompletes, autosuggestions. So now with respect to our browser, we can change the history, and we can say delete the history. We just delete the browser itself. We can format our entire phone. our mind is like a browser, but with no delete features. Because there are no delete features, everything that we do, it gets stored in the mind as an impression. And especially if you do something repeatedly, that gets stored as an impression. So say if somebody had to visit Hollywood.com for the first time, then they have to type 9 letters, which requires some effort. But afterwards, they just type H and they go there. Now if they visit it 100 times or 1,000 times, Hollywood.com may even become their homepage. So they don't even have to do anything. Just touch their browser and they're at Hollywood.com. So like that, for us, with respect to our mind, the choices that we make, they get stored as impressions in the mind. And from every impression, we get a proposition. A proposition is like an autocomplete. And that proposition impels us to action. And that action creates an impression again. So this is how, okay, if I have used, if say for 1 month I've used social media excessively. I spent a lot of time on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And now that was vacation, I had time. Now, as my school is starting, my work is starting, I don't want to spend so much time. Say, okay, now I won't do it. But what has happened is during that 1 month, if you spend hours and hours on that particular thing, that social media, it's created an impression in our mind. And that impression will lead to propositions. And so, as I said, typing 9 letters to go to Hollywood.com as compared to just clicking H and going there, it requires far less effort. So like that, once the impressions are stored in the mind, repeating the same behavior becomes incredibly easy. And now in this case, it becomes not only incredibly easy, it often becomes harmfully easy. Undesirably or harmfully easy. So what the impressions do is, they make repetition dangerously easy for us. So quite often we focus on willpower. No, I won't do this again. But if I open my browser and type H, I don't want Hollywood.com to come over there. Well, willpower is not really relevant over there. It's relevant, but Hollywood.com is going to come as autocomplete. So then we focus too much on willpower. Then sometimes we beat ourselves up for things that are not presently in our control. The browser history is a real thing, like that the impressions in the mind are real things. And those impressions are there, we will be prompted to particular kinds of behavior. So whenever we just have a few moments of a break and what should I do? Maybe we could talk with a friend, we could go for a walk, but the impression comes, pick up your phone. Pick up the phone, okay, go to this. And even without thinking, we just go there. Now sometimes it's required to go there, but it's not necessary all the time. So here, if we understand that the mind is a real domain of its own, and the mind is actually affected, transformed by the way we function. So the mind will always be given impressions, but through social media, we are given especially stimulating, agitating, consuming impressions. Say we meet hundreds of people. We may forget most of the people whom we meet. But if somebody is extraordinary, maybe very tall, very short, very good looking, whatever, then they create an impression. Oh, that's great. And we remember that. Now in social media, the things are designed in such a way that everybody is trying to create, every stimuli is trying to create maximum impression. And that's how we tend to get hooked onto it. So this is a real thing. So there's a real effect that has happened on the mind. Now why am I emphasizing so much that there is a real effect? So a mental impression, it is similar to a physical injury. Suppose, say, we had a fracture. And now if I have fracture and before the fracture maybe I was lifting a lot of weights. But now with a fractured hand, if I try to lift weight, what's going to happen? I just won't be able to do it. Just have willpower, come on, lift it. No, it's not going to work. If I have fracture and if I try to lift a weight, soon I'll become a weight which somebody else has to lift on a stretcher. Isn't it? So, just as a physical injury is a real thing, a mental impression is also a real thing. So, physical injury and mental impression both can impose some limitations on us. And we need to acknowledge the limitations. So, this is going to lead us to the solution part. If there is a physical injury, if there is a fracture, say, now when there is a fracture, if we want the fracture to heal, we are going to, third part was I talked about the concept, now I want to move toward the cure. If there is a fracture and I want to heal from it, there are two phases. The first phase is that I put my hand in a string and stop motion. Okay, don't move your hand. And then after that, resume slow motion and do it gradually. Now if you see, these two are in one sense opposite things. First, the same doctor will tell, don't move your hand. Minimize if possible, avoid all movement completely. They may put a sling or they might even put a cast so that there is no movement. Now when people are small, the children are small, sometimes they put signs on there or make symbols on the cast and kids feel, oh, I've got something special over here. Now it's actually a restriction, but we try to encourage the children. Okay, this is special, you preserve this. So basically the idea is, the first thing the same doctor will say, don't engage yourself with this. Don't move your hand. But after some time, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the doctor will say, now start moving. Hey, we say, doctor, make up your mind. First you told me not move, now you want me to move. Yeah, this is a different phase of healing. So just as there is a process required for healing a physical injury, similarly, there is a process required for changing the impressions within us. And just as fracture recovery, it's not a matter of simply raw willpower. Now, I will lift the weight no matter what happens. You cannot recover from fracture simply by raw willpower. What we need is a process. Now, following the process requires willpower, but you could say it's refined willpower. Refined willpower means willpower educated to do particular things. Willpower is what? Initially, oh, don't move your arms. Afterward, start moving your arms. So, we understand the need for refined or guided willpower with respect to physical injuries. Say, if I have got cough, then I won't say that raw willpower, I'll not cough. That's not work. That's not going to work at all. If somebody has got a digestive disorder, you cannot use raw willpower at that time. Now, willpower is required. If I got cough or if I got stomach upset, willpower is, okay, don't eat any food that will further increase the agitation. Maybe take some simple soups, regulate your food. So, willpower is required, but it is refined or guided willpower. So, same way, if we want to recover our sense of control on our lives, to whatever extent it has been whittled away by social media, we need refined willpower, not just raw willpower. Raw willpower will inevitably lead us towards self-loathing, which is not what we want. Now, raw willpower, what it does is, with respect to mental issues, it makes us oscillate like a sine wave. See, we are sometimes wise and we are sometimes otherwise. What do you mean by otherwise? It's like sometimes we may also speak, social media is terrible. We may tell others also, don't do this, don't get involved in this, it's bad. And sometimes when we give advice, we may think, hey, such pearls of wisdom are coming from my mouth. Maybe I should write a book on this topic. Maybe I should write some articles. Maybe I should become a life coach. And then after some time when we ourselves are provoked, hey, what did I do? So we keep oscillating. So raw willpower is not enough. So now what does this refined willpower mean? And how do we use this refined willpower? That's the key thing. So you remember we did that experiment of looking at the inner screen. So now let's consider that feature once again. See what happens is, if this is me, the soul, and this is the mind. Now if you consider the mind to be like our phone. Now on the phone there are, if on our phone screen, there may be 100 notifications. Now what may need to be noticed, maybe only 10 need to be noticed. The notifications will keep popping up, and sometimes some notifications just cannot be disabled. They just come and we have to, the notifications come, we don't notice it, we focus on what we want to notice. So like that, you can say on our mind, lots of notifications will keep popping up. Lots of notifications will keep popping up. Now that's like on the inner screen, hundreds of images keep coming. Not everything that comes on the inner screen needs to be noticed. And we understand this normally. I will use one word, and I use the word thought in two different ways. If you can try to tell me whether the meaning is different, and if yes, what is the difference? Okay. So I just got a thought, and I have given this a lot of thought. I just got a thought. I have given this a lot of thought. Can anyone say what is the difference between these two meanings? Yes, please.
There is a lot more effort in the second one, or more attention, but the first one we can just have the thought and it can fly away.
Yeah, so here effort is there. Here it is almost involuntary, isn't it? It just comes. Anything else? How many of you agree that there is a difference? Okay. How many of you think the difference doesn't make any difference? So, the point is that when we have a thought, I just got a thought. That's like, we can say, it's like a notification popping up on our phone. As a thought pops up within us, it almost comes on its own. Not everything that pops up inside us needs to be noticed by us. Not every thought requires to be thought about. I have given this a lot of thought means, okay, this particular issue, I have consciously contemplated on it. So you could almost put it this way, that here I just got a thought means, like I am here and say this is the screen. So it's almost as if that thought is popping up and coming towards us. But when I have given this a lot of thought, what it means is that I have focused on it. So the directions are opposite. So why does this matter? See, by the impressions that have been created in our mind, because of our past actions, because of our, say, uses of social media, many thoughts will pop up within us. So, okay, whenever we have a few free moments, immediately, oh, I want to go to this, I want to watch this, I want to do this. That kind of thoughts will come up. Now, just because that thought has come up does not mean we have to act on it. And willpower also does not mean that the thought should not come up. when we set ourselves to an unrealistically high standard, I will not even think about this. I'm never going to do this again. But the thoughts will pop up. Just like I may want to go to holiday.com, but as soon as I type H, Hollywood.com will come. Doesn't matter. Let it come. I don't have to go there. So basically, I'm going to talk about two strategies for dealing with the mind or for healing the mind that has been afflicted with too much social media usage. The first strategy, we're talking about cures. The first is distance. Distance basically means create a distance between us and our mind. Try to increase this distance. You understand that there is something inside me which is actually different from me. So now how can I do this? There are various tools for it. One of the tools could simply be introspection. That we maybe every day we just spend a few moments and think of the times when we just acted impulsively. Okay, what exactly happened? Hey, at that time that thought came up. Okay, let me eat this, let me watch this. Oh, maybe I didn't have acted on it. So it's like if we become a little more introspective, we can start noticing these bubbles coming inside us. These thought bubbles coming up, like pop-ups coming up. And hey, when the pop-up came, I maybe didn't have to go in that direction. Another way to do this is also through journaling. So by this what will happen is if we journal, and now journaling is best not done in a judgmental way. What a fool, you planned, you didn't not going to waste your time and you wasted so much time. No, just try to, whenever we are doing introspection or journaling, do it in a mood of curiosity. Let me understand how my mind works. Let me understand myself better. We want an attitude of curiosity, not an attitude of judgment. We don't want to be judgmental and harsh towards ourselves. Okay, then I understand. Say, there are particular times when this pop-up comes up and I go off in that direction. Say, if I have an important assignment to do, say, and the deadline is just tomorrow, and then the pop-up comes up, hey, let's see what is there on Insta right now. Okay, not now. But maybe we are a bit tired, we are a little bored, and then the pop-up comes up. That's the time, we just go in that direction. So try to understand patterns. Create a distance creating a distance, it helps us to understand the patterns when we are more vulnerable. So the impressions are there. So for example, if I understand, okay, whenever I type H, that's when that Hollywood.com comes, and if I'm not careful, I press enter, it just goes to Hollywood.com, even if I didn't want to. Okay, I understand that pattern. So then, okay, whenever H is going to come, that's the time when I need to be careful. So basically for us, this distance helps us to discern patterns. So now earlier I talked about how we feel strained, we feel stressed, we feel insecure. So look back, okay, what are the times when I feel insecure? Okay, whenever I go on Instagram and look at this kind of profiles or this kind of pictures, that's what happens. So try to discern some patterns. So if we discern patterns, then we can protect ourselves. We can protect ourselves better. Generally, so sometimes people feel when I succumb to something, I just don't have any willpower. Well, that's not true. We all have willpower. It's just that sometimes our willpower becomes weak. If we had no willpower, all of us would be dead by now. There are so many ways in which self-destructive urges can come upon us. So we all have willpower. What we have to discern patterns. What are the patterns? When our willpower weakens. And then when that is happening, we need to be protecting ourselves. Generally, you may have heard this. That there are some typical situations when we may feel, when we may succumb more to our temptation. So there's an acronym used, HALT. Does anyone know this full form of HALT? So when I am hungry, when I am angry, when I am lonely, when I am tired. So quite often these are the times we become more vulnerable. So if we understand, okay, now this is just an example, but we understand patterns for ourselves. These are the times when the pop-up comes and I succumb. So it's not a matter that my willpower is weak, I have good willpower, but those are the times when I am weak. So once we understand this distance, then for such situations, maybe we can create boundaries for ourselves. So if we can create boundaries, what could the boundaries be? Okay, so maybe when I'm hungry and I won't keep my phone next to me. Maybe if I want to do something else, maybe I'll read something. Otherwise what happens is, we are hungry and we are eating on one side and we are watching and we don't keep track of how much we are eating. Just get lost. So various things can happen like that. So once we acknowledge our weakness, when we recognize the areas where we are weak, then we can create boundaries. So this is distance. So this distance is, we are creating a distance first of all between us and our mind. And then by that, we can create an outer distance between the things or the situations where we become weak. Say for example, if somebody is recovering from alcoholism, then if they are staying right next to a bar, then maybe they need to relocate, isn't it? If they're really serious about recovering. And because we all will have moments of weakness. What do you mean moments of weakness? The pop-up comes and there's a tendency for autocomplete immediately. So when that happens, okay, I have a moment of weakness if the bar is right next door. Some people have a bar next to their house, some people have a bar in their house. And they will say, oh, this is not for me, this is only for my guests. Well, a guest will come in. That guest is our own impressions, our own alcoholism. There will be no bar to go to the bar then. So create some distance. So this distance is both. As I said, the distance is both internal and external. Internal is between the soul and the mind. And external is between us and the situations or the objects that weaken us. So this is the first part of the cure, and the second part of the cure I'll conclude with this. That now, if say, going back to the example of the browser, what were the two words we had discussed? Hollywood and holiday. Now suppose somebody just visits holiday.com once, at that time they may have to type all the 7 letters. And for somebody it may feel like 7 letters typing is like climbing a mountain. It's too much. But somehow they do it once, they do it twice, they do it thrice. Then after some time when they type H, Hollywood.com may still come as autocomplete. But holiday will also come as autocomplete. Maybe it comes lower, but it will come. Now if they keep going to holiday.com, they keep typing holiday.com, after some time it will come as the first autocomplete. So here the second part is diligence. Diligence means just do desired activity repeatedly. So whatever it is, so the willpower, quite often we focus on what I will not do, and that doesn't work. I may decide, okay, I'm not going to visit Hollywood.com, but that Hollywood.com is already stored in the browser history. So instead, what will I do? So instead of saying that, okay, I won't spend so much time on social media. No, think of what do I want to do? Now, what is really of importance for me? And once we focus on that, okay, this is important for me. And we just try to do that. Try to do that diligently. Now we will say, okay, I have to study, I have work to do, but all that becomes tiring. How much can I do it? That's okay. This is where desired activity means, what are we trying to do? If we consider two things, there are things we feel good doing, and then there are things that are good for us. So if you consider food, for example, now there is food that is tasty and there is food that is healthy. Now if these two circles were identical, life would be so easy, isn't it? But that doesn't mean that there is no overlap between these two circles. There is some overlap. Now there might be some food which we like also, and it's also healthy. So you find that if you have to eat that food, it won't be an assignment. It won't be an austerity. We can do that. So like that, when we are trying to do diligence, try to find out something which is in the intersection of these two activities. Okay, what is it? Something that I like to do and something that is good for me. So if you can find that, then doing that repeatedly will be relatively easier. It will be relatively easier. So for example, say instead of just surfing on social media and looking at people's photos, maybe I like to hear nice music. So there's various kinds of music, but maybe there's calming music, maybe there's spiritual music which uplifts my mood. So whenever I have the situation of halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, at that time the urge is, okay, let me visit TikTok, let me visit Instagram. But maybe I keep in my phone some nice soothing music and I turn it on and hear it. Now sometimes we may just go off on social media, afterwards realize, hey, I shouldn't have done that. Okay. Then whenever you realize, come back. See, the browser in one sense, all that it cares for is how often do you repeat. Somebody visits holiday repeatedly, holiday will come in autocomplete. So I talked about refined willpower. Refined willpower means don't focus so much on what we want to give up. Focus on what we want to take up, what we want to do. And if you're just diligent in doing that, we'll find that diligence, when our diligent focus, we just keep repeating what we want to give up versus what we want to take up. So quite often we feel my willpower doesn't work because our whole focus is what we want to give up. But if you just shift the focus to what we want to take up, then that will create fresh impressions in our mind. And once those impressions are created, then from within we'll be prompted in that direction. So now each one of us can do some inventory. What would fall in this particular circle? What is good for me and what I feel good doing. Now many ancient traditions had something called rituals. Now, the word ritual often has a negative connotation, but it's especially when the negative connotation is for ritualistic. That means something is done mindlessly. But rituals are basically time-tested means or time-tested practices. They tap the power of repetition. So you will see nowadays there are many self-help books. A CEO's 3 morning rituals, or my daily morning rituals. The idea. So we could make our own rituals. Maybe as soon as I complete one activity, at the end of the day, before I just pick up my phone, I'll just take a few deep breaths. I'll just maybe scan my body and relax my body. Maybe in my particular tradition we chant mantras. Maybe I'll just chant some mantras. Maybe I'll read some affirmations. So we find things that we can do and we make them our personal rituals. So once we make these as our rituals, they will become like our shields. So they will protect us. They will protect us while they are also changing us from within. So whatever be the particular way our mental health has been impacted by social media, if we can adopt this distance and diligence, just don't be impatient with yourself. The one person might say have visited Hollywood.com. Again, I talk about comparing mentality. Comparison can affect us even in our attempt to change ourselves for the better. Say, somebody may have visited Hollywood.com 50 times and just go 5 times or 10 times to Hollywood.com and then that becomes their first autocomplete. They change it. But maybe somebody else has visited Hollywood.com 5,000 times and they do 5 times Hollywood.com and still Hollywood.com remains autocomplete. Yeah, I'm worthless. No, you're not worthless. It's just that it will take some time. So be patient and be diligent. Don't get caught with the hope for immediate results. Results will be there. Every time we are being diligent, the change is happening. The impressions are changing. So what diligence does is, if this is my mind, there are these unhealthy impressions inside. But what I can do is, I can override them with healthier impressions. When I override them with healthier, we cannot delete, I said, but we can override. And with time, so what we override, with time will override. We override past impressions, and with time what they will do is override. Override means that, okay, the first autocomplete was earlier Hollywood, but if I visit holiday repeatedly, then holiday will become the first autocomplete. So like that, from within itself, for us, we will get this tendency, okay, I'll override. For a proposition from within will work for us instead of against us. And that is the state where we can actually become internally empowered by our mind instead of being disempowered by our mind. Then we can use social media constructively to connect with others and to act purposefully. When the past impressions are overridden, then we are empowered by our mind. Why empowered? Because our mind itself is prompting us towards healthy things, not disempowered by our mind. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. So since you are going to get some assessment for this, so this is the summary like a cheat sheet now. Everything that I've spoken here, that will be over here. So I talked about this in 3 broad parts. Does anyone remember the 3 parts? The first was concerns. So we talked about 3 concerns with social media usage.
Excessive, exaggerated, exploitative.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So excessive. There's too much stimuli that leads us to us feeling strained or stressed. Then exaggerated. That leads us to feeling insecure, worried. And then exploitative. That it's like we think we are going fishing, but it is our mind that is the fish that is being caught. That leaves us addicted. And then quite often what happens is, with respect to social media overuse, we often have 2 unhealthy attitudes. One is nonchalance, I can give it any time, and the other is self-loathing. That, what a fool I am, why can't I give it up, I have no willpower. But in between, when we want to go, it's not that we don't have any willpower, it's more like we need refined willpower. So what does refined willpower mean? For that, I talk about this model of the self, that there is 3 levels: the body, the mind, and the soul. So the mind, basically, in it impressions are formed, and those impressions, they lead us to a vicious cycle. Impressions lead to propositions. So just like if Hollywood.com leads to every time H is typed, automatically that comes up. Propositions lead us to actions, and actions reinforce the impressions, and in that way we tend to get trapped. So getting out, the same behavior becomes dangerously easy. So the mind with impressions, it is akin to a body with injury. So the whole point of discussing this model was that don't expect that just by our willpower everything will change. Why do we need refined willpower, guided or directed willpower? That's why we discussed this whole model of the self. So this was the concept. And the last part was cures. We talked about two main cures. You remember the two parts? Yes, distance. Distance means basically we try to learn to observe our mind, to discern patterns within it. So we can create a distance by introspection, by journaling. So basically, by such introspection, we discern patterns. Patterns about when am I weak. So for example, you talk about, say, halt. There are times when we might find ourselves weak, and for those situations, we can create boundaries for ourselves. So rather than depending on willpower, we are creating boundaries. And what is the second part? Diligence. Now, so here we discuss that there are certain pop-ups that are going to come up because they are impressions. So if we can decide which pop-ups to focus on when the pop-ups come up, but then we want to rewrite the impressions in the mind. So what we do is, diligence means we find out, we basically try to overwrite the impressions. So once we override them, in due course, they will override. And to help us override, what we can do is, we can look at things that fall in the intersection, that the things which feel good and are good. So if you can find out something, then here we tap power of repetition. We can make rituals for ourselves, our personalized, customized rituals. So, while social media might have its customized baits for us, we can have our customized rituals which can protect us from social media, and then we will be empowered by our mind rather than being disempowered, and thus we can move forward in using social media constructively for fulfilling our life's higher purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a very enlivening and insightful talk personally for me, and I'm sure all of you agree, because social media is impacting all of us one way or the other. It doesn't discriminate in terms of age, gender, color, nationality. It's completely open, and we are all vulnerable here. So do all of you agree with me?
Yes.
We'll open up for about 10 minutes for question and answers here. If anybody wants to ask a question, please go ahead for speaker. And for those who came from Bio 333, Bio 428, before you leave and after you've had your lunch, please give me your names so you can get the extra credit. But right now we'll open questions here.
I don't really have questions, it's more just thought. As you were speaking, an example is I have a younger cousin who sounded like he was depressed because he wasn't getting enough attention or likes. And I tried to reassure him that social media is not a place to compare, but you have to see it as more of a place to just unwind and just use it as a positive. So not to go there, just use it for entertainment and that's it. It's not real life. I felt like he needed to hear that. I felt like a lot of people need to hear that.
Yeah.
It is robbing people of happiness.
I think what happens is that there's a part of us which we knows that, but we need reminders. And this kind of reminders can be helpful, and especially if we can sit down with somebody, if we find somebody who is really too much into social media and it's hurting them, then we can sit down, spend some time with them and help them discover this intersection of what feels good and what is good. Because telling somebody don't go there, okay, what should I do? Because while we say we all are busy, but we also need something to fall back on when we need some relaxation. So sometimes the person can take responsibility to find out some healthier replacement. But if they can't find that, then sometimes those who are wanting to help them, they can sit with them. And initially in diligence, a little push is required. That developing a new habit, like I said, visiting holiday.com, it requires a certain number of letters to be typed. Otherwise, they just click H, enter. So that initial little push is required. So if we want to help others, that's first thing. Help them discover what could be a replacement and just give them a little push in actually being diligent in adopting that replacement. Then that will definitely help them.
Yeah, you talked about willpower, and that's kind of creating boundaries, right? I think setting myself 10-minute boundaries, just say 5 minutes, and finding what's more important. Like right now, it's school assignments that we have to do, or reading a book, or just talking with somebody.
Yeah,
It's very important, and because everyone's kind of losing that social aspect too. That's pretty sad, but I mean, I'm setting these boundaries for myself so I don't fall into
yes, that's
social
very
media
helpful.
hype.
Yeah, see, what boundaries does is, it doesn't get us caught in 0-1 kind of logic. You know, that I won't do this ever, or I just give myself complete to it. Boundaries give us a sense of perspective, or rather, it gives us a sense of negotiability in our life. And sometimes we set boundaries and we may not stick to those boundaries. We may fall. We don't have to beat ourselves up on that also. Because, okay, maybe this particular boundary, maybe at my level, might be too difficult for me. Maybe I need some other bond. Just like if somebody goes to a gym and first tries to lift weights, they might think, okay, I can lift this huge weight. And then after some time they say, hey, this is too much for me. And okay, find a lighter weight. So we need to sometimes negotiate with ourselves to find out what boundaries work best for us. Thank you. Yeah, please.
I know it's all like about the person, it depends, but do you think that there's a healthy amount of screen time?
Of course. Of course. Nowhere, I also mentioned that I don't want to pile on social media. I didn't say social media is a problem. The 3 aspects that I said, excessive, exaggerated and exploitative, that is the problem. We cannot be Luddites who just turn away from the world. You know, we will have to engage, and there are people who are very dystopian about things. You know, every new technology has come with its alarmists. When the car was developed, when the plane was developed, when the computer was developed, even when the calculator was developed. When the calculator was developed, there was an alarm that people will lose all maths ability. You know. Now, has that happened? Well, yes, we have become a little dependent, but not that people have lost maths ability. So we are not being alarmist here in the sense that, give it up completely. We want to be not alarmist, but we want to be aware. Okay, so now what would be healthy amount? Again, that will depend on individual to individual. Some people, their very nature of their job or profession or studies requires some amount of engagement. So we could also decide that in social media, maybe this particular media, I need more. So somebody may say, I need internet access, but I don't need to be on this particular social media. So we have to find out what is healthy for us. Okay. Thank you. Point. Yes, please.
So it was mentioned that you spoke at Google. What is it that you spoke about? And you talked to us about the effects of social media on mental health, but I'm just curious to see what you had.
Oh, I have spoken 3 times in Google. Generally, it has been associated with mental health itself. I think the first time I spoke on the topic of mental health and spirituality. And there I talked about how spiritual practices science is the study of matter. spirituality is the study of what matters. So both are important. Science is the study of matter. But science itself does not tell us what is really important for us. That is where spiritual growth helps us become more self-aware and understand what matters for me. So when we have a complement of both of this, the study of matter can improve our outer world. The study of what matters can improve our inner world. And we focus our attention, energy on things that are important for us. And they can be complemented. So I think one time I spoke on spirituality and mental health from this particular perspective. A couple of other times also I spoke. You had a comment, a question in the session?
Sorry?
Did you have a comment at your session in the session? No. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please.
What's your perspective on the use of iPads in elementary schools? Because there are a lot of these kids now, especially our son is Monday through Friday.
I feel that, just to come to this point, I feel that, we just can't turn back the clock. Technology is like a juggernaut. It's going to move forward.
Yeah.
But what we can do is, rather than turn back the clock, we try to turn on the compass. Turn on the compass means equip people more and more with a sense of direction. So, in general, in small pockets of some areas, turning back the clock might be possible. That means maybe in some small specific educational settings, in some special schools run by certain forums, maybe we can go back and avoid using technology. But what needs to be done is turn on the compass. Is help people connect with their own innermost self. By which, now we may say, kids, how can they do that? Well, that's difficult, no doubt. But while kids are becoming more and more distracted, we live in an age of distraction, but it's also true that actually kids' IQ is increasing with every generation. If you see the kind of, say, video games people play, they're very complex. And the sheer amount of factors that they have to take in and process, it's difficult for us. So, it's not that everything is doom and gloom. So, if we can focus on turning on the compass, then that's the best way. Because even if we say in teenage, now many schools do that, they may give them iPad, but there are a lot of sites which are blocked and they can't really go about everywhere. So that kind of restrictions are good. But I think we as an individual, we really can't go against the whole way in which society and technology are going.
Yeah.
So we just need to focus on turning on our compass.
Okay.
Thank you. So, shall we stop?
We can stop.
So thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks very much everyone for coming. And if you have any questions for him, you can directly email me and I can direct the question to him if you have anything particularly. And please don't leave without the food. Yes.